a lot has changed since the last time you were here.
Yeah, and you're Superman. You're advocating for us, and you're passing good conservative bills anyway. And
well, I don't think we're passing much of anything other than the trains going back and forth as we get run over, but we're trying.
Well, I guess that's, I mean, at least we have somebody out there advocating for us. That means a lot to a lot of us.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Can you talk about the atmosphere and the mood before the new governor and then at the transition and how things are progressing?
Certainly. It's been an interesting ride. And of course, the first thing I have to be is tell all conservatives there wasn't a group of Republicans out there trying to oust the governor. This was purely the media. And it's intriguing because as you saw this unwrap in the media, it was the Democrat side or the executive branch kind of unraveling itself. And for the last 2 weeks, we were here in the Capitol, and for the last 2 weeks before Kate Brown came in, it was almost like a free-for-all in the building here because, there was the governor's staff running around, but nobody really connected. And then, of course, he resigned, and then he backed out of resigning, and then he resigned again. And then in that second resignation, he announced there'd be a transition the following week. And then Governor Brown was sworn in. But so far, Governor Brown hasn't really replaced anybody. It's still the remaining executive branch that's there, and she's saying over the next 90 days they're going to kind of go through and figure that out. And just to tell you, the remainder of the atmosphere, despite having a new governor, Governor Brown, who in theory hasn't been touched by this whole series of events, is that at least 15 of her existing staff I think are under subpoena from the federal government in terms of the FBI and Justice Department. Another 14 or 15 are under subpoena from Congress, and then there's like a 450 individual list of they want records for all these people. So the building is still a little squeamish in dealing with the executive branch. And of course, those people who say the legislature must go on or something are a little bit naive of how things work here.
So do you think that we can expect to see more problems in the executive branch?
Well, I think undoubtedly, in no disrespect or even to Kate Brown, the new governor, the problem is she's the one that now, if you don't know, when they come in to ask for information on, Bob Smith, who used to work for the governor who's still there, it's the governor who has to approve whether we're going to fight a subpoena or not fight a subpoena. So she's kind of drugged into the middle of this. And so this is going to go on, and it's going to be pretty testy, we'll say, as we go forward. And of course, it kind of, I heard several of the majority ranking members of the Democrats say that, well, since Governor Kitzhaber's gone, his budget's just been thrown in the trash can and we're just going it alone now. So I think it's going to be kind of a rough road in front of us. But I think there are actually some good news, though, I guess you could say, for fiscal conservatives in terms of Kate Brown coming into office.
Oh, is there?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I heard she was pretty liberal.
Well, she is pretty liberal. There's no two ways about that. She's like everybody else that's in that party. I wouldn't say she's completely tax and spend, but at least with her, what she's doing up front. She's very forthright.
Okay.
So there's no dark of the night stuff there. But the problem is, you got to remember, is now that she's the new governor, she's got to start running for re-election in the next 12 months because she doesn't serve out the full term, she serves out a half term. And so she's got to go to a general election in which the population has changed fairly significantly. And that means, a lot of the signature things you would see of a governor who was in his last term that he didn't care, right? He was just going to railroad the thing through on the train full speed ahead. You now have a governor who's going to be probably running against Ted Wheeler, another Democrat, in the primary, state treasurer, former Republican, who is a lot more middle of the road for a Democrat. So I'm going to be very surprised if you see Governor Brown push as many of the liberal type issues that you would consider a liberal that Kitzhaber had. So she's going to be moved into the middle. Other than that, she'll lose the election in the primary.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting that we can never get a Republican elected despite how bad a Democrat winds up being.
Right.
And I'm not saying they're all bad. I'm
right.
saying that it seems to not matter what corruption is out there. It seems like Oregon will always elect a Democrat governor. And that's too bad.
It's an intriguing issue because if one of the signature bills that they actually originally came from Kate Brown, and it was targeted at the 2016. And you remember I just mentioned 2016 she's running. She would have been running for Secretary of State for re-election then. And so there's the motor voter bill that's out there. And what that bill is, and this comes right back to your question, that motor voter bill is automatic registration when you go to the DMV. first thing up front, they go to the DMV and they get the names of all the individuals that aren't registered, and they automatically register them as a non-aligned. And then they're going to send a voter card out to them and say, if you want to opt out, put a stamp on this and send it back. Or if you want to become a Democrat or Republican, fill this card out, put a stamp on it, and send it back. So the net result of that, just right off the top, this is an ironic thing, is that the Democrat registration in the state of Oregon will land at about 34% when this is executed and done and completed by the November elections of 2016, and Republicans will be around 23 or 24%. So it's going to get worse.
For Republicans?
And
they're doing this on purpose to get the Hispanic vote?
Well, I'm not sure it's the Hispanic vote, but it's certainly on purpose. I mean, and so therefore, they're going to have the advantage. But the interesting thing, it's only a one-time shot. I mean, they do this one boost, and then even when you read the bill, there's not a reoccurring event because they don't go back and get the inactive voters and try and then bring them back. So the Republicans are going to have a real tough time in 2016 going up if they're not united. And I think, as you know, there's been some ununited events in the Oregon Republican Party recently.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, you served with Representative or Governor now Brown.
Correct.
Did you serve with her in the legislature?
Yes, we did serve with her legislature, and my experience has been with her. You might not like what she says, but there's no ambushing with her. There's no dark of the night. She's very upfront, tells you exactly what she's going to do, and she tries to go for that, which is surprising because generally in the legislature she was go, 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 and she's become governor and she's not absentee, but we haven't seen a lot of her. And so again, I think that goes back to the deal as she's surprised that she's governor, right? And she's in the line of succession, so she's the right person. But then she's also in this position of trying to figure out now, the things that I would have wanted done if I was elected for 4 years, I'm not going to do now because I got to run for re-election right now as this legislative session, because this will be her signature of what she's going to do in the future will happen right now. And of course, we have several major failures out there, of the Cover Oregon failure, that some of these low carbon fuel standard issues that are floating out there are not very popular. Anybody that knows economics knows that gas prices are going to go back up. And so now that she's going to be in a position where it's her administration doing the recommending, it's going to be a lot different.
Okay. Now, do you like her personally?
She's a nice enough lady, personally. I mean, it's intriguing to me, and because she's very polite, she's very courteous, she's very approachable.
Okay.
She reminds me, I suppose, a little bit more of when Governor Kulongoski was here. He was very personal too as a Democrat. You didn't agree with him, but he was very personal.
Yeah.
And I would say she's even more personable, and she's more, for better, outgoing. She's a people person. She's not one of those people to hide in the back of the car, with the state police and drive around. No, she gets right out in the middle of the crowd. So I think state police will have their hands full too.
Okay. Well, her stance on Common Core.
Her stance on Common Core, I think, is completely unknown.
Okay.
I mean, she has, again, you remember, she was getting ready to run for re-election as Secretary of State, right? And unlike the Attorney General, Ellen Rosenbaum, who, takes a position on everything, right? Because she appears to be running for something else. And Ted Wheeler, who is always involving himself in everything other than the state treasury, right? He's always making statements. Kate has been just kind of nose to the grind, just doing the sort of, Secretary of State things that are going forth. And so we have no idea where she fits in Common Core. And as you know, Common Core is one of those interesting ones because this is all over the place. You've got some Republican individuals who are saying, well, the structure of Common Core is good because it sets standards, but the items they have in Common Core are bad. You have some teachers saying we hate Common Core. Some teachers say you love Common Core. And I know that they've had this discussion out in the McMinnville School District, for example, where you're from. But this Common Core hasn't permeated the entire state yet, and so it's really strange.
Yeah. Well, the big problem with me is it lends itself to the propaganda of the federal government, and so
Absolutely.
If we get let's say a Bush in, let's say George Bush, was in, and he was a Christian, and so if he wanted to teach the Bible or creation or whatever,
right.
I mean the liberals would have gone crazy, and so I'm here thinking, we have this liberal president.
Right.
Without a doubt. And he starts his program. Is he not going to have every liberal, thing in there that I totally disagree with? I think that even if it's not there now, it will be, in the next couple of years.
I think you're absolutely correct.
That's my problem.
And I agree with you. And the interesting thing is that that we find in Oregon is that local school districts, even though people are talking about Common Core, local school districts have some power to do stuff. But this is the thing that intrigues me, is we don't really have any local control. I mean, the McMinnville School District has been a little bit more vocal in some of these issues, but many of these districts just boilerplate whatever comes down with the money attached to us. And until people start pushing back, and we're going to talk about that in the legislature and OLIS, until people push back and say, no, we don't want to do this. And as I point out to you, this is an intriguing one, Common Core, because you got Republicans that are for it and opposed to it. You got teachers, which are predominantly the unions in the Democrat camp, are opposed to it too. And you think you'd have this natural coalition of people who would push back and say, hey, we want the standards because we want to improve education without spending more money, but we don't want all the propaganda that goes with it.
Yeah.
And at this point, it really hasn't risen up to a legislative level. There's a few bills out there that says get rid of it, but I just had teachers in my office the other day. This is interesting. It was not with the Oregon Educational Association, but I had 4 teachers in my office the other day, and they're all opposed to Common Core. And then you ask the union representative for the OEA, and they'll say, well, we're in favor. We voted formally for Common Core, but oh, by the way, if it was me personally, I don't like it. So it's like, okay, as you point out, what's wrong with this? Because I think the commonality you say is, you see some educated individuals that look at Common Core are saying just what you said to me, and that is if we have the empire of Bush continues and we get a third Bush elected, right, that he'll push back and want to do this Christian thing, and so the Democrats don't want that. But then on the opposite side, you have the Republicans who are looking at the Democrats saying, well, if there's another Democrat like Hillary gets elected, she's going to want to do this thing. And so both sides are suddenly realizing that the bureaucracy in Washington, D.C. isn't what they like.
Yeah, where's my rights?
Yeah, right. Where's our rights?
You know how many thousands of dollars I've spent on private school because I disagree with some of what they're teaching?
Right.
Yeah, and if they just wanted to have school choice, then Common Core can be one of those choices. Kind of along the same line, I just had an interview with Parents' Rights in Education. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you heard this in Seaside. They have a seminar or thing that they do every year annually where they bring teenagers there, and it's kind of linked to Common Core in that some of the same people who are doing Common Core are doing this. Mm-hmm. But it is so despicable, the sex education that they teach, because they promote pornography, they promote gee, you could be gay, here's ways you can check, and things like, and very visual. So that's a problem. Are there any issues with some of the people you talk to or the representatives? Do they understand that these are the type of things that they're doing through Common Core?
Yeah, it is. Some of them understand that. And again, the issue comes back to is, okay, how do you fix it?
There aren't too many outlets where you can hear in-depth spiritual issues alongside conservative politics, where we can make a difference to those around us and our country. It's brought to you at a cost that's worthwhile, yet I'd like to do more. On 11thhourpolitics.com, you can buy books and videos that will advance this cause. There's delicious chanterelle tea containing vitamin D, proven to dispel depression. We have an art gallery and options to produce your own commercial or have us do it for you, along with other projects. It's only through a co-op that things get accomplished. I hope you will join me in this mission.
I just started taking colloidal silver this winter regularly. My energy level is better than it has been in years. My typical winter cold was minimal, lasting 2 days instead of evolving into bronchitis as my colds have been prone to do.